Well, congratulations for successfully navigating the construction work. Here you are. We thank you very much. Before I introduce our guest speakers, I would like to just say a word of thanks to Mr. John Ullman, who took a very active part in making this day possible, for his generosity. I was trying to think, how am I going to introduce Kim Hayes? And I thought, well, all I have to do is mention some things that you can relate to, and the connection will be made. So let's see how far we go here. There must be an English major or two somewhere here. I guess not. Oh, there's one. Maybe on the varsity sports level, a soccer player perhaps, maybe a track participant, basketball. Basketball, is that correct? Basketball. Power forward. Okay. President of Clara House. Okay, we're pretty well represented. When it comes time for the awards assembly a week from Monday, we will all be there, and we will hear that someone is the awardee of the Paula Wavero Womanhood Award. You will hear a Ralph Colby Award winner. You will know that the graduating class students elected some 3 or 4 people to be baccalaureate speakers. So we're relating to Kim, and we're glad she's here. Nowadays, Kim, her husband, their 2 children, Robbie and, don't tell me, Kaylee, live in Phoenix. Kim is the president of Partners for Prosperity, and we're very glad she's here. Kim Hayes Butler.
Thank you so much. How fun to come back. It's just, you know, you probably hear this like, oh my gosh, she has all these things attached to her name, and it's worse because I'm a CFP, so I have a few initials after my name, which just means I can take and pass tests. You know that, don't you? Initials after name and initials before name, I think it's the same thing. You just can take and pass tests. You know, all those DR, PhDs, that's all it is, take and pass tests. But in any case, I'm just delighted to be able to share a little bit of time with you. I'm hopeful that we have some time at the end to do a little bit of Q&A. And I want very, very much just to share some perspective with you. I graduated in 1988, and so maybe the last almost 15 years or so of my life can be of benefit to you guys today to learn a little bit about what it's like to have an entrepreneurial mind, even if you never own a business. And I know some of you are business majors and some of you are English majors, and yes, I was an English major. And I tried to get my business degree, but you know, I just couldn't get through some of those practice sets. So I don't have a business major, but that's okay. And so here I am from an English major at a small liberal arts school to an owner of a financial planning firm. And I had to take finance as an independent study with a professor that's not here anymore, and it's a good thing because it was really scary. But finance is my life. The only difference is it's personal finance, and that's a lot easier than all the corporate stuff. So we won't talk about financial stuff today, though. I just really want to share with you some things that I think will be helpful to you as you go forward into any endeavor. I don't care if your hope is to be in nonprofit environments, if you want to be a teacher, if you want to be a stay-at-home parent, if you want to own a business, if you want to be in a business, if you want to be in government. Any of those roles can be benefited by having an entrepreneurial mind. I'm curious, some of you apparently have read Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. Can I see a show of hands? Okay. Some of the thinking that I have really is very similar to that book. Robert Kiyosaki is a client of our firm's. He's an absolute joy to work with. One of the things that I've given to Jim is his game Cashflow 101. So I want you guys to bug him and get him to play Cashflow 101 in your classes, because it's more fun to play a game than to listen to a professor, isn't it? Yeah, I thought so too. Sorry. But yes. But Robert's just got a really neat view, and for those of you that haven't read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, it's a story of Robert's childhood with a rich dad, which was his friend's father, and a poor dad, which was his own father. And both of those gentlemen have passed on, so he felt free to really write this story. And this book just developed out of his own desire to tell a story. He took it to publishers. Nobody would publish it. He ended up self-publishing it. Robert's been a client of our firm's for 7 or 8 years, and I think the book's been out maybe about 5. He used to sell it out of the trunk of his car. I mean, it was just a book that he had, self-published, and all of a sudden now it's all over the bestseller list. And I've given you another one on our reference list of his, I think, about 4th book called Rich Kid, Smart Kid, which is also just a fabulous book. I see some heads shaking, that I highly, highly recommend. But back to this idea of that entrepreneurial mind, which Rich Dad Poor Dad talks about, and you really are starting, as you pick up various things in your communities today, to hear a lot more about entrepreneurialism. And what I want to help you see is that transition. And we're going to talk a lot about ways of thinking that you can do today in your classes, that you can do in future years as you get out in the real world, and that you can give and contribute to any environment that you're in. You might serve on the board of an organization, you might be involved, as I said, in a nonprofit or what have you, but this kind of entrepreneurial thinking can really do good in our world, and I think is a very necessary part of elevating the level of everybody's contribution and the way that we can give to the various things that we care about. That also relates then to what you're doing on a daily basis in this thing called a job or work, right? Because if you can have an entrepreneurial mind in your work environment, it doesn't matter whether you're the janitor or the president of a company or somebody in the middle. If you can have an entrepreneurial mind, you can contribute to that environment in a way that will give a lot back to you. I take a look at my own situation. I own this financial planning firm. We have a nationwide clientele. I'm on the phone all day long with clients. We have some in Phoenix that we actually have to get dressed up for when they come in, because when we're on the phone I can be in PJs, which is kind of nice. Okay, not PJs, but nevertheless, I work and I get paid for what I do, but I love what I do. And it's because of that entrepreneurial thinking, which really starts first with how to give, and then starts second, third, and fourth with some really concrete things that I hope to share with you today that you can take back. And just in case some of you are wondering why you have a little smiley face on your piece of paper, that's called the gap discussion, and we're going to get into that in a little bit. But first I want to share 3 major decisions that you need to be thinking about as it relates to having that entrepreneurial mind. And the first one is actually broken into 2 different decisions. 2, I guess, entrepreneurial decisions that I would encourage you to make. I love it. Get the paper out, the pen, I hear it. So are you ready? Okay, 2 entrepreneurial decisions. The first is that you need to look for a way to provide value in any situation. You need to look for a way to provide value in any situation by looking for ways that you can give first in providing value. You'll be able to take on that entrepreneurial mindset. Okay, value added. I mean, that's talked about all over the place. You see it in advertisements and all kinds of things. How do you provide value? You ask a question. So I'm going to share with you a question that comes from Dan Sullivan, who's the owner of the Strategic Coach. And the question is, if we were meeting here 3 years from today, what has to have happened for you to be pleased with your progress? Now you could adjust the time frame. Maybe it's a month, maybe it's 5 years. But if we were meeting here 3 years from today, come on in guys, what has to have happened for you to be pleased with your progress? So think about this. I can ask this of my little kindergartner. Okay, now I don't ask it in 3 years. He can't think that far. But, on a Saturday morning, what has to have happened, Robbie, today for you to be pleased with your progress or for you to be happy about today? You can ask this of a boss. And by the way, if you guys think your teachers are tough, wait until you get into a boss environment. But think about turning the tables and asking them, if we're meeting here a year from now or a month from now, what has to have happened for you to be pleased with your progress? If you can figure out what they want to have happen and become a part of that, then that's being an entrepreneur. That's taking your situation, putting value into it, and then this is that second decision that I talked about earlier. We've got 2 entrepreneurial decisions, and that's that you only get paid for the value that you bring. Okay? We only want to provide value to get paid. Do you notice the order? We provide value and then we get paid. And I think so many times as we head into environments, we're not clear how to provide value. We might want to help, but if you can learn to ask that question, in the Strategic Coach program we call it the R factor question. R stands for relationship. And the question again is, if we were meeting here 3 years from today, what has to have happened for you to be pleased with your progress? And if you can ask that in a working environment, or if you can ask that of a board of a nonprofit organization, or if you can ask that of a family reunion, you know, hey guys, it's Friday, we're here till Monday, what has to have happened for you to be pleased with this weekend? Then you know how to provide value. You get a menu handed to you about how to provide value. And that's a way to think like an entrepreneur, because entrepreneurs provide value. And what else do entrepreneurs do? They provide value first before they expect to get paid. There's lots of motivational speakers out. Brian Tracy's a real popular one. And he talks about you only getting paid what you are worth. And I know a lot of radio announcers have really quizzed him on this. What do you mean people only get paid what they're worth? Well, the more value you provide, the higher you get paid. And if higher pay is a goal, and it isn't for everybody, but if higher pay is a goal, then look for a way to provide more value. Okay? So 2 entrepreneurial decisions. First, figure out a way to create value by asking the R factor question. Second, figure out a way to provide that value first so that then you can get paid. And only expect to be paid when you've provided value. And that kind of enters me into the second thing that I want to share with you, and this is an attitude. So we had 2 entrepreneurial decisions, now we've got an attitude. And the attitude I'm going to title the no entitlement attitude. Okay? Give you a little bit of history on this. I think since about World War II, our society has had what I call an entitlement attitude. There's been lots of money, there's been large governments, huge bureaucracies, large companies with tons of capability that kind of went into our world, especially in North America, after World War II, and said, we can fix the problems. We're going to come in as this big government, this big company, and we're going to fix the problems. We're going to hire you when you're 25 and you're going to leave here when you're 65 with a gold watch. And we're going to set up your communities and we're going to provide everything that you need. And as a society, we got used to that. And we said, I'm entitled to that. I'm entitled to that job. I'm entitled to that security. I'm entitled to that protection. And then as we hit the 70s and the 80s, we had this economy that was really doing a lot, and yet it seemed to be a real difference between the owners of the companies and everybody else. And as we progressed in that and into the 80s and the early 90s, things were going well in some areas, but things were going not so well in other areas. And there was a lot of re-engineering and pink slips and forget all the words they used, but basically a lot of firing of people. Some of your parents have probably went through this. In fact, this is really the essence of that Rich Dad, Poor Dad book. But what happened is this no entitlement attitude was there with the entrepreneurial thinkers because they said, you know what? I'm not going to rely on the government, and I'm not going to rely on some corporation, and I'm not going to rely on the degree that I have from a school, and I'm not going to rely on other people. I'm going to rely on myself and my God-given talents to go out into the world with a no entitlement attitude. And so that's really the second part of being an entrepreneurial thinker, even if you don't own a business, and really get out there and provide the value and expect to get paid only after that value is given by having that no entitlement attitude. And it, you know, if you just think about it, in fact, I was reading something that Bill Gates did. He's the one that had the line, if you think your professors are bad, wait until you see your boss. But he also was saying something about, you know, the work environment, it doesn't have summer vacations. They're not going to pay you to find yourself. You got to do that on your own time. And the work environment is going to expect things out of you. And, you know, some of the schools these days don't even apparently apply like a failing grade because they don't want to hurt the self-esteem of their students. And Bill Gates is saying, it's not real world. If you're not making what it takes in the company by providing value, that F will mean something a lot more, like you're out of here, right? Instead of just an F on a paper. So it was just kind of an interesting thing that he had come up with, I guess apparently in a speech to a college graduating class. It's floating around on the web. I'm sure some of you have even seen it. But the last little piece that I want to share about this entrepreneurial mind is the concept of two different economies. Okay, so we had two entrepreneurial decisions, and then we have a no entitlement attitude, and then the third component is two different economies. Those two economies are the results-oriented society or economy and the time and effort society. And if you think about it, many people, especially after graduating, are in a time and effort society. You're in an environment where theoretically, if you put in the time and a little bit of effort, you'll get paid. But what I'm going to encourage you to do is to think about, at least in your head, if not in literal terms in your work, crossing over sort of a risk barrier. Okay? So over here you have the time and effort society. You put in the time, you get paid. Over here you have the results-oriented society. And the only thing you get paid for are results. And that risk barrier that's in the middle is a scary thing to cross over. But that's what entrepreneurs do. And that's what anybody with an entrepreneurial thinking approach should do. So that you're willing to say, you know what? I've got to provide value. And I'm willing to go over here in the results-oriented society to provide that value first before I get paid. And you know what? If there's no results, there's no pay. Okay? I remember my husband graduated from Print in '86, and I finished up in '88, and neither one of us wanted anything to do with the word sales. Oh, we can't sell. We're not, I have a degree. We can't be in sales. I mean, that literally was our mindset at the time. And now, we're both in the results-oriented society. What does that tell you about what we do? Okay, now sales isn't for everybody, and sales clearly isn't the only thing in the results-oriented society. But it's a pretty specific one, because if you don't provide value, guess what? Nobody buys, which means guess what? For a paycheck. And so you pretty quickly figure out how to provide value. But you can do that in any environment. In fact, I was just talking with somebody, now I've forgotten who, that was telling me, you know what? Selling is anything you do is selling. You know, the kindergarten teacher is selling ideas to the children. You as a parent are selling ideas to a mom, to your children. As a mom, you're selling ideas to your children. Anytime you go to talk to a boss figure about a project that you want to work on, or vacation that you want to take, or whatever, you're selling ideas. And so if you can always be thinking of that crossover between the time and effort society and the results-oriented society, and do anything you can to provide an environment where you are getting paid for results, taking a risk. That risk barrier is an important thing to notice. And if not, that's okay, but understand then that you're in the time and effort society, and it's a lot harder to be entrepreneurial in that environment. Okay? And today's world, to sort of finish my little history lesson, is really all about the small companies and the entrepreneurial organizations that are out there, because even the really big companies are decentralizing management so that they can become little miniature entrepreneurial organizations. And again, that entrepreneurial thinking has nothing to do with whether you're technically the owner of a business. In fact, I think the definition of an entrepreneur, one of them anyway, is anybody that provides new ideas. And you all are in a great position to provide new ideas. A new person in an environment has better new ideas than anybody else in there. And as senior people in companies, they would do best by listening to the new people's ideas for a couple reasons. Guess what? Your idea is closest to the consumers, isn't it? because you're just one step away from being a consumer. You're just one step away from being on the outside of the company. Now you happen to be on the inside of the company, and you have a perspective that the people that have been there forever don't. But secondly, new ideas come from new thinking, which tend to come from people that are younger and that don't have some of the baggage that people that have maybe been there a long time do. So that crossover can happen in any environment, bureaucratic or not. Okay? So 2 decisions, no entitlement attitude, and 2 economies. The way to be an entrepreneurial thinker regardless of whether or not you're in a business environment. I think we've got about maybe 10 minutes left to go. I can always find more things to talk about, but I would love to answer questions. If I can be helpful in any of the elaboration of what we talked about today, financial questions, what's it like out in the real world questions, throw it at me and I'd be happy to answer. Yes? Great. What's a typical day for me? On Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, I deal with clients. I call them focus days. And I am in front of clients either personally face-to-face or on the phone because we have the nationwide client base. In client meetings, they're usually 2 hours each. So I pretty much am 8 to 10, 10 to 12, a little bit of time for lunch and a few other extra things, and then 1 to 3 and 3 to 5. And our client meetings are either over the phone and on the web or face-to-face, helping them work through financial issues that are educating them on a very, very holistic sense of financial planning. So that's Tuesday through Thursday. Monday and Fridays tend to be more preparation time. I have a team of 7, and so we get together on all the clients that we're dealing with that week on Monday, and we make sure that everything's ready. And then we, on Friday, sort of clean up from the week and make sure that everybody's got what they need, etc. And sometimes I'm out of the office. We call those buffer days, where they're just sort of in between and we're more internal instead of external. And then because of the 2 children, I'm with them in the morning, and we have a nanny that goes to our church that comes in and helps them during the day because they're not in school full time yet. And then I'm at home every night by 6 and dealing with the kids and getting them to bed. And then I usually read in the evenings. I have a big belief that TV and newspaper have, and this may be a bit of a surprise, absolutely no spot in my life. I don't think that there's much good that I can get out of any of those mediums. So whatever credibility I've just built with you all, I may have shot it down, but I do read the Christian Science Monitor, and I feel like any news item that I need to get, I'm going to get in more proper sources than the spin that the TV and the news put on it. And quite frankly, in the evenings, I don't have the time to watch, shows that would be less newsworthy. I do a lot of reading in my profession, so I have a lot of professional things that I read. But your typical newspaper, TV environment, I don't. So I love to work out. I spend a lot of time. I like to rollerblade. I like to lift weights. I like to run and hang out with the kids. And that's pretty much what the Saturdays and the Sundays are like. So my husband's second reader of our church right now, so you can tell what Sundays are like. But the client contact is real critical. But my role in our financial planning firm is mostly getting the big picture set up for them. I don't do a lot of the nitty-gritty financial planning. My team does that. So I tell people I like to talk about what we do, but I don't really do what we do. The rest of the team does that. Yes? That's a great question. When I left college, I'd already interviewed and I was hired by a bank. And this is a fun story. As an English major, I don't know why I actually started out in English, but it seemed logical at the time. My junior year, I did an intern in San Francisco in a law firm because I thought I was going to be an attorney. And I very quickly discovered that was not the right route for me to go. I was so glad to have discovered that then, prior to having to take LSATs and going through way too many years of law school. Started out at the bank, and in the banking environment, this was before banks did mutual funds and financial planning kinds of things. Just really realized that when I was helping with people at the bank, it was just checking accounts and savings accounts and maybe a mortgage or a car loan. And I really was interested in a much bigger picture than that. And, the financial planning arena now I think is a fairly popular one, but then it wasn't. This is 89, 90. But it was just something that I was interested in. And so I left the bank in 90 and got my certified financial planner designation, which takes 2 years to get and is not real easy to go through. And at the same time then was actually practicing in the financial services environment, which really starts out in mutual funds and life insurance and those kinds of product-oriented environments. And then as I've progressed, gotten into more holistic, where now we deal with everything from simple car insurance all the way down to your most complicated real estate deal. And the real estate side's obviously where Kiyosaki came into our picture. So it was just sort of a natural development. I couldn't have ever indicated it, early on, but it was just a love that I gravitated to real quickly. One of the things that I've listed on your reference that I think you might be interested in is the Kolbe website, Kolbe.com, Kolbe. I sure wish when I was at Prin that I'd had access to this. It is a profiling that helps you identify your natural advantage, the natural way that you go about getting results. It doesn't matter what you are trying to do, it measures action, and it will never ever change throughout your entire life. It is your natural God-given talent that it measures and identifies for you. And had I known that when I was just finishing up school, I might have hit on the financial planning issue quicker. But I highly, highly recommend that you get onto that Kolbe website and identify natural advantage. A couple other things while I'm at it. You see the couple books by Kiyosaki, a couple other books on there that are financial planning related, new rules for the new economy and the millionaire mind. The best is yet to come is a little bit more holistic, worldwide thinking kind of book on financial issues. How to Create Great Relationships and The Relation Shift by Steve Chandler. Steve Chandler is also a client of ours. Are great materials on any kind of relationship building, whether it's with a potential spouse or with a friend or with a business environment. And then anybody read The Tao of Pooh? Kind of a neat book on just a good way to think. Any other questions? Yes. Absolutely. Yeah, let's just think about it for a minute. When you go into a classroom, do you have an attitude of, I'm here and I'm here to get, and I want to be fed information so that I can pass my test or complete my project or whatever? Or can you switch that and have an entrepreneurial attitude of, I'm here to give? And what could I do today in this classroom to give? Because if you can switch that around and look at the environment, your fellow students, your professors, and see a way to give first, then you'll end up getting a lot more. So yeah, I would think entrepreneurially by seeing ways to give, including maybe the asking of the R-factor question. At the end of today, shorten the time frame a bit. At the end of today, what has to have happened for us to be pleased with this progress? Maybe it's in a group discussion environment. Maybe it's just literally the way you're physically sitting in the classroom. I know I sat in classrooms, scrunched down in my chair, arms folded. Do you sit that way? Or do you feel like, okay, I'm here to give, and I know by giving I'll get more, and am I going to sit up and at least pretend that it looks like I'm enjoying what's going on? Because that makes it easier to give. And sometimes it's kind of that fake it till you make it. Like if you physically pretend that you're having fun in there, you actually might have some fun. So I would just give first instead of look to get. Other questions? Martha? Yeah. Yeah, that was one cool project to be involved with, and absolutely something that I am just thrilled with. And it was a great example of entrepreneurial thinking. Like, well, what, okay, we've got this presentation to give. Okay, we all want an A in the class. But what other value could we provide in the giving of this presentation? And all of a sudden, just the presentation went to the class, and then it went to the trustees, and I think was approved very quickly thereafter. So I very proudly carry my Principia MasterCard, and I won't let Boatman's Bank give me the gold card because it doesn't have the pretty picture of the chapel on it. I want the one with the chapel. And you know, people will pull that out and kind of look at it. So yeah, thank you for remembering that. Any other questions? You're good to go. Thank you very much.